Hi, I'm Buffy and I talk about movies. Today I'll be talking about The Secret Agent, written and directed by Kleber Mendonça Filho. Okay, I am so sorry. And starring Wagner Moura as the main character and a lot of fantastic actors whose names I'm not even going to try to butcher. It's a Brazilian film and it's nominated for the Best International Film and the Best Picture of the Year categories. And Wagner Moura is also nominated in the Best Actor category. And as it's quite rare for a non-English language film to be nominated for the Best Picture and for a non-English speaking actor to be nominated for the Best Actor, I was extremely excited to watch this film. Considering the fact that No Other Choice and It Was Just an Accident weren't nominated, which are produced by the same studio as The Secret Agent, Neon, and considering the fact that Lee Byung-hun wasn't nominated for his performance, I had super high expectations when it came to this Secret Agent. However, even though the film was extremely well made, I'm sorry to say that I was quite disappointed, unfortunately. Not to say that this movie is bad in any way, but my expectations might have worked against it, to be honest. But first, let me get to what the film did exceedingly well. Firstly, the film looks absolutely gorgeous. The story takes place in the 70s and the whole look of the film reflects that time period. Apparently, the filmmakers used period-accurate lenses for their cameras, and that's how we get this vintagey, grainy look that works so well with this time period and with this style. I loved the set pieces and set design. Everything looked authentic and lived in. The sheer amount of coordination and the level of production is mind-blowing when you really think about it, especially considering the fact that it was made for only $5 million, which is actually incredible and so insanely impressive. For comparison, No Other Choice was made for $12 million, which is still considered to be quite a small budget for such a film, and Marty Supreme cost $70 million to produce. So yes, the way The Secret Agent looks and feels is an amazing achievement of its own. The shot composition, camera movement, and blocking all felt purposeful and intentional. The sound mixing was also well done, and I liked the score for the film, even though it wasn't super memorable. It wasn't overbearing or manipulative, and I liked that a lot. I also appreciated the lack of non-diegetic music a lot of the times, which made the story feel more grounded and realistic. And diegetic song choices also worked quite well in the film, in my opinion. All the acting was pretty grounded and natural, and I thought the actors did a great job overall. I'm always happy to see non-English speakers nominated for a foreign language character, so I was super excited that Wagner Moura was getting so much love and recognition for this performance. And I have to say, he's really solid in this role. In my opinion, the role itself doesn't require too much from him, but I liked the fact that his inner turmoil and tension is always felt through his performance, and a couple of really emotional or moving moments required him to display that inner struggle without overacting or underacting, which I imagine must have been a challenge, but he was absolutely fantastic in those moments, his eyes and micro expressions conveying everything going on in his mind. Other than those couple of moments, his performance was great, but not as memorable as I would have liked, honestly. And I couldn't help but think back on Kang Go-sung, who wasn't even nominated for his performance in Parasite, even though the film itself was nominated and won the Oscar. And come to think of it, none of the actors were nominated for Parasite, which is crazy to me. Not to say that Wagner Moura wasn't great, it's just that I think my expectations were a little too high considering that it's quite rare that actors get nominated for non-English speaking roles. But to be fair, it's not that the actor wasn't memorable. The character himself was quite passive and bland in my opinion. So there's not much more that Moura. Am I saying his name right? Moura? I don't know. Moura. I should say Moura. Okay. So there's not much more that Moura could have done there. Now, I watched this film without having seen the trailers, of course, and without knowing anything about the story. But in order for me to articulate why it was a disappointing viewing experience to me, I have to touch on the plot. I just can't simply convey what I didn't like about it otherwise. As you can tell, technically the film is pretty much perfect, although the pacing was quite uneven in parts, but the editing reflects my issues with the story and the film overall. So again, I can't talk about it without spoiling the whole film pretty much. So here's our spoiler warning, 3, 2, 1. Spoilers ahoy! Let's get into it. Okay, so the film takes place in the 70s where there's a military dictatorship in Brazil and where the government bears down on people that disagree with their rulings. And these people have to live under aliases in hiding. Corruption is rampant, free speech is pretty much non-existent, and all these refugees are gathered in a pseudo hotel hiding in plain sight, kind kind of. The main character ends up angering an authority figure, and as the film starts, he's headed to this refugee community. And from the very first scene, we see how the police operates and how corrupt the system is. The main character stops to refill his gas where the police appears, and even though at that gas station there has been a body for the whole weekend, I think, for a couple of days, somebody has killed somebody else, and then there's just that body lying there. And when the police appear, instead of inspecting the body and getting rid of the body, they just start inspecting the main character and his car. They want to get something out of the main character. So they just try to find something wrong with his car or with his documents, and by the end of it, they ask for money, and when the main character cannot give them money, they just settle for cigarettes. This is such a good scene to actually portray how rampant the corruption is in the country and how the police operates. This first scene was really gripping and intriguing, and it's essentially a cold open for the film. The opening credits play over the character driving toward the community, and in that moment, I was locked in and intrigued and interested in the story. Bear in mind that what I've told you about this character hasn't yet been revealed to the audience. So I was super excited to see where the film would take me. I think the opening scene was quite tense and gripping, and I loved it, but I also think that it doesn't prepare the audience for the tone and the pacing of the film adequately. The truth is, when we get to the hotel, the movie slows down significantly. I didn't mind that at all. I thought that maybe the film would take a bit of a different route with getting us familiar with the main character's routine, habits, or life before throwing us for the loop with some initial incident that would change everything, right? But no, not really. And this is where I start bitching about why this film was, quite frankly, very boring to me. I hate this word, by the way, boring, because it's so generic and so subjective and it doesn't really tell you much. And I also have to say that I've seen reviewers praise the film and say that they were kept at the edge of their seat the whole runtime of the film. But as much as I believe there to be a lot that's praiseworthy in this film, the tension is not one of them, in my opinion. Here's the thing. There are a lot of extremely interesting things that happen in this film on the background that showcase the corruption that's taken over the country. The press pretty much working for the police officers actively looking for bribes, a servant with a killed child not getting the justice she deserves, the press covering gruesome murders as a possessed hairy leg literally murdering random civilians, which was shot in a very fun B-horror movie style, authority figures hiring assassins who in turn hire their own assassins to pass the job on to them. So yes, the film was packed with side characters and side plots that were all quite interesting on their own, but the main story of the main character is actually really stale in my opinion. Nothing happens to this guy for the majority of the film. There are assassins and police officers hired to kill him, but nothing really happens with him for the majority of the film until he starts recounting the events in his life that have led him to this point. It's a shame that all of these stories didn't mesh well together in my opinion, and the editing didn't help much. There were big chunks of the film where we follow the detectives investigating an unrelated crime or the assassins running their errands, and these scenes are way too long to keep me engaged. That in combination with the main character story where not much happens and yet the pacing is still kept slow, the film was a chore to go through for me. I'm so sorry to say this, but I couldn't wait for anything to happen at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I think all the decisions made were intentional here. The pacing is extremely mundane because unimaginable evil acts have become the normal course of action, really. I love the decision of the film not revealing to us who actually killed the main character, which shows how covering up violence and not having the freedom of information or the freedom of press affects the future of history. One can only guess what actually took place at the time when there are no accurate records for posterity. I love a lot of these decisions, and I loved the main character's backstory and his mother's story that's lost to time because she was a simple servant, essentially raped by her 17-year-old master. If I remember it correctly, he was 17 years old, the main character's father. But all of this information is revealed way too late, and it doesn't help me get back into the story anymore. So yes, the film was quite dull to me, and I did not enjoy watching it in the process. It's so interesting to me that I couldn't wait for the film to be over, but after my friends and I left the theater, I spent about 2 hours talking to one of them about it. I had a lot more fun going over the story and the filmmaker's motivations for their decisions, and also doing a little research about Brazil's history and how press was actually covering violent crimes through the lens of blaming a haunted leg, which actually was inspired by a true situation, you know? It's crazy. And all of that research and all of that discussion was actually super fun and interesting to me. It's crazy that the most entertaining part of the film came after while discussing it with my friend. And it's such a shame, really. This movie has everything that I love. It should have been my favorite movie, really, that's nominated for the Best Picture. It's about an oppressive regime bearing down on intellectuals and regular civilians. It has 70s atmosphere. It references The Exorcist, and The Shining is even literally shown on a screen in a cinema in the film. And it has a B-horror movie segment that's super well shot for that style. These are all ingredients for a movie that I should be in love with, and yet I can't recommend it to anyone, unfortunately, just based on how tired I was of it when it ended. And that's coming from someone who loves quote-unquote slow burns. Check out my other reviews if you don't believe me. Anyway, I don't think The Secret Agent is a bad film in any way, and please feel free to check out more reviews to see if this film could be for you. I'm not a professional film critic at all. I'm just your weird, kinda snobby BFF that's also kind of like a film buff, giving you advice on what to watch, basically. But the film didn't work for me, unfortunately. The pacing was inconsistent, the tonal shifts didn't match sometimes, and the main story wasn't as engaging as I would have liked, so watch at your discretion if you decide to do so. I think that's it for me today. Now, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you're interested in more movie reviews, and if you feel like it, of course, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Jeez, was that too fast? I don't know. Also, I have a playlist. I have a playlist of Oscar-nominated movies. Check it out. Thank you.